Hello, everyone. I'm very excited for today's guest. We have with us Nitin from Maavi Global. Nitin is a household name in the world of production, fashion, sourcing. He was the managing director for one of the world's largest sourcing outfits, Asmara International, based out of Southeast Asia, Triberg, with a strong presence in India. He's been the managing director in the US, working with pretty much all the major fashion houses across Main Street and fairly every upscale outfit as well in the world. He's got a tremendous amount of experience, a 30-year career, working with American brands, sourcing for them all kinds of products from all around the world. At this point in time, it's absolutely it's incredible to be able to have somebody like Nitin give us an hour of his time to sit down and talk to us about what he would be doing or what his advice would be for some of these brands out there who are going through some interesting times amidst all the tariff related uncertainty. Now, the point in time we're going to pick for this podcast is as of September 2nd. There's a whole bunch of array of tariffs that have been, in different phases of implementation. Some are about to get implemented, some being more threats, and some actually in full scale implementation and execution right now. So, with all these moving parts, brands are trying to adapt the best way possible. So what we're going to do is a new version of what we call supply chain teardowns. Basically, we're going to go deep into the underbelly of supply chains of some of these pretty popular brands are doing amazingly well in the market today. We're going to use publicly available information as to how they produce, how they source their products, amongst other things. And we're going to go deep into it. And Nitin's going to share his perspective on what he likes, what he thinks he could be doing better. And if you're one of the brands who are listening, I hope this is helpful for you. And obviously, Nitin would be available or I would be available to sit down with you and kind of go over your particular case as well down the line. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, introducing and presenting to you Nitin Gupta. Nitin,
Hi,
welcome to the show.
hi Ram. Thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely to have you on the show, Nitin. As I said, we live in interesting times. Before we kind of jump into the meat of the event necessarily, how does it feel? Like, you've been in the industry long enough. You've seen enough cycles. You've seen ups and downs. You've seen COVID. You've seen everything before that. What's your read? What should a mid-scale importer of apparel products be concerned about? Should be doing today?
When up to this last 6 months, I thought I'd seen all, but obviously not. I,
Did we all?
I think the needle has been put back to zero.
Yeah.
But you learn, and you adapt, and you try to do what you've learned to do whatever. Unfortunately, the problem, Ram, is that we are in an industry. I'm talking of the apparel fashion industry,
Yeah.
where uh, in the last 20, 30 years, prices have not only stayed stable, but they've gone down. And I'm talking of retail.
Okay.
Inflation, when it hits, when COVID hit, for example, food, you went to McDonald's, you paid like $3 for your burgers, and today you're paying something like $7. And
Yeah.
people still end up doing that because they consider that the cost of eating something.
Yeah.
Uh, as soon as you move up the ladder into more expensive restaurants,
Hmm.
the difference and the inflation is highly visible. In
Yeah.
fashion,
Yeah.
you don't see that. And I think there is a fundamental problem in American retail versus retail the rest of the world. So you don't see that in Europe, for example. In Europe,
Okay.
if there are certain issues which hit the market, Zara will raise the prices. Zara, in fact, has been
Okay.
interestingly raising prices dramatically. The Zara of 4 years ago is not the same as Zara of today. Americans, on the other hand, are just falling over backwards to either maintain their prices or even lower their prices. And the category, surprisingly, in a country like America, which is the strongest
Hmm.
economy of the world, the strongest category is the discounter. Uh,
Yeah.
which is weird
Marshalls
if
and
you think about it.
TJ Maxx. Yeah.
You have the greatest economy of the world, and yet people are raving about Dollar General and TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Ross and how good they're doing and how Costco is surviving. But the middle tier and the top tier brands are desperate. They are not doing well at all. Their margins are falling on the wayside, which should worry all of us, but it's not.
So fascinating what you're saying. So what you're telling me is like, hey, with a McDonald's burger in 2020, you paid $4 for, now you're paying 7, and people are like taking it in the stride. But a $15 T-shirt I bought in 2020 today is probably being sold for the same 15 or maybe even $12, and that's just the direction America is headed towards, and that
Yes,
doesn't
I
sound
mean, a
sustainable.
Maybach pulls out in front of Marshalls. Somebody gets out and is happy buying a 14.99 a
T-shirt.
shirt, that same
Yeah.
shirt, and and again, brands are killing themselves. So the same Polo Ralph Lauren T-shirt, which is selling at $75 in Macy's, Polo is happily selling to a TJ Maxx at 19.99.
Wow.
So brands are cannibalizing themselves, and I think the strategy, which used to be evident in America across the brands, has just been dying, and I'm as befuddled as everybody else as to why this is happening.
What gives? Like, I mean, this can't be. It has to come out of somebody's pocket. Are we compromising on quality? Are we compromising on, frankly, let's call it a spade right now, right? Sustainability claims are all under question today. So are we saying, hey, screw the sustainability angle, I don't care what you do, or are we compromising on quality? Like, how are the economics supporting this?
Ram, sustainability was never a big issue in the US anyway. I mean, if you remember a few years ago, it was all about organic. I
Yeah,
remember all of my brands were running after me 10, 15 years ago, wanting organic, organic, organic.
yeah,
The moment they heard
oh,
that it's going
it's-
to be 80%, 80 cents more to the thing, bye bye organic.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
brands who are plugging organic, like good brands like Prana, etc., are
yeah,
almost all gone also.
yeah.
So, and the same thing I think is happening with sustainability. The American consumer, unfortunately, has been treated by the brands themselves to go cheap, 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 and
Wow.
that has not helped the industry at all. Not helped the industry at all.
Okay, so that
And
brings.
I blame the retailers and the brands for that, not the consumer. The consumer, in fact, would be willing to pay a little extra if you were to, like Apple trained us to pay extra for certain products. Uh, but the fashion brands have trained consumers to actually go the other way. Please ask for cheaper goods. Do not ask for sustainability. Please ask for something that I can make in a back alley in North Korea and ship it through China. And please ask for it to be sold to you at 9.99.
Whew, that is a loaded
I'm sorry,
claim.
but that's the yeah.
That's the status over here. Wow. Okay. That was a loaded statement there. Um, it's interesting you say that, right? Like, I don't know if you saw the ad from Google Pixel about the Apple phones over last week. It was hilarious. It speaks to somewhat what you're saying, right? Like, Apple has trained us to pay the premium. But anyway, not to kind of distract ourselves with this Apple.
No, and I'm just to qualify. I'm not talking of all the brands.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
just
understand.
saying that a
Yeah,
certain group of American consumer has been
yeah,
trained only in fashion. By the way, I don't see this
yeah,
in any place else. You walk into a grocery aisle, you'll see better end yogurts,
of course.
you'll see
Yeah,
better end milks, you'll see
yeah,
better end apples. Better food. So
yeah.
they want you to eat better and better, but they want you to dress cheaper and cheaper.
Wow. Okay. Now that's a great place to kind of break off into this, right? Like, but okay, actually, no, before I do that, now I can't get over this easily. So today, now you have a 30% tariff on top, which means 30% increase to your cost basis, right? Let's not even go into this angle that foreign companies are paying tariffs or foreign countries are paying tariffs. Like, I'm not wasting my time on that. Let's just work with the facts here. Who's eating the cost? Like, how is it that the t-shirt price is going to be at 12 or 15 and not go to 18 or 20 because they have to cover that 30% duty rate today?
I think for that, we have to look at the margin structures of these large fashion companies.
Hmm.
A lot of these fashion companies are built on fat and inefficiency. Uh,
Yeah.
so, in a way, they sort of replicate the poorly run factories overseas where
Hmm.
inefficiency is the game.
Ah,
So, you have companies who are very, very thin margins because they kept their costs low. And then you
okay.
have, I'm sorry to say, but people like Gap, who for 30 years, ever since I have been traveling to this country, every year I go hopeful, entering into a Gap to see something new, and I see
Yeah.
the same khakis and the same T-shirts, and when you look at how much they're paying internally, they have thousands of people working for them for millions of dollars, and they keep churning through those people. So you have to ask yourself, the same product you're selling at the same stores with the same consumer who's getting older and older. The only thing is you're getting that product made cheaper and cheaper overseas with your newer countries of origin.
Hmm.
What gives? And the only thing that gives is that your own internal structures are so inefficient and
Yeah.
so driven by inefficiency that you have to add those 80% margins to survive.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a TJ Maxx or a Dollar General or a Costco even uh, very well survives at 25-30% margins because they churn the product faster. They give you the product that you need and they get out of it. And then there's something new. So if you're able to keep your costs low, Ram, there is
Hmm.
no reason for any brand to be fearful of the tariffs because the tariffs in the end will only add whatever 15-20%. If you've kept your internal margins low, you can absorb the tariffs. But if you've
Okay.
kept your internal, if inefficiency is very high and your margins at 70-80%, you will lose.
Interesting. No, that makes a ton of sense. That actually makes logical sense here. Um, yeah, it's interesting times we live in. A lot of these companies we're about to talk about today, they are in the crossroads of having to make some very difficult decisions. Now, again, I think we picked some amazing brands today. So again, as I told the audience at the beginning of the call, what we're going to do is we're going to pick. We have three brands shortlisted today. Very interesting brands. We're going to bring to you each one of them one at a time and tell you about the brand, show you the website, go into again publicly available customs records, look at what their supply chain looks like, where they ship from at a broad high level, and then kind of talk about the product category and then kind of go into some specifics about what that brand could be doing for this time at this point in time.
I
I
think
don't
somebody
necessarily.
like you, Ram, in fact, is needed in the industry because this industry has been so run on Excel sheets, as you know, in
Yeah.
the past across not only the front but the back end.
Yeah.
And it's the back end which worries me more, the
Yeah.
supply end part of things, which has been given forever to these four, five, six companies
Yeah.
to let them manage. So I think
Yeah.
to that end, whatever you're going to show me, and I'm sure it's interesting,
Yeah.
the analyzing of that data is actually where you find all the
Yeah.
fact.
No, thank you,
Right.
thank you. I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. There's definitely a lot to change over here, and I think we're making steps in the right direction. I feel pretty positive about it. I think AI is going to be a force function. It's going to force a lot of hands into trying to get people to adopt technology a little bit more aggressively. It's going to be unsustainable to operate otherwise. You to your point earlier, you need to operate with very thin margins, and so efficiency is the name of the game. Okay, without further ado, the first brand we have today, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. And this is a very popular brand. You've probably seen it multiple times in the store or on your website. So, can you guys see my screen? I think at the stage. There you go. So, the first brand we're going to talk about today is Skims. Uh, a very popular brand, started out more as an intimates and undergarment company, and then kind of evolved very quickly into apparel. They're doing exceptionally well. As you know, if you didn't know previously, Kardashians own it, and they've done really well. They've been very bold with their marketing. They've been very bold with their ambition. They've done exceptional things and tried a lot of things, and not everything wins. And they take it in their stride, and they keep continuing to innovate. So what we're going to do next is essentially, if you guys don't know this, in America, all import records are publicly available data. You can buy subscriptions through multiple companies. We at Silq subscribe to a company called Panjiva that gives you visibility into, hey, what does an importer profile look like? So at a very quick snapshot, this is what Skims importer profile looks like. At a high level, these are the countries they majorly import their products from. Obviously, they make a lot of products in America as well. For the listeners to just to give you an informed opinion, a lot of their products are made in America, but they also import from overseas. Again, the kind of products they import are undergarments, as I said earlier. We're going to skip through, just to again at a high level. This is the countries they source from. These are the ports they ship from, bringing products in. So, with that being said, right, if you look at it at a high level, primarily Sri Lanka is the country they import majority of their garments from. Sri Lanka is known for high-end intimate apparel, from my experience. But Nitin, over to you. What does this tell you about Skims? Would you like me to go through the website a little bit more in detail? What would you like to see?
No, I think if you look at the data itself, and it's fascinating. People keep talking about getting out of China, and
Yeah,
if you see the country of origin, there is one country which is not there at all, Ram, and that is China.
yeah,
So what that shows to me is that this is a highly intelligent company
Yeah.
which has understood the game of supply chain very, very well,
Mm-hmm.
not today, but years
Mm-hmm.
in advance. Because, to implement something like this, it's not like 1st of January they decided and 2nd of February it happened. So
Yeah.
they've obviously managed to do strategic thinking years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
They have their product profile guaranteed in the sense because they were following the celebrity that they were based out of and what
Yeah.
she was wearing, and that product they understood was highly China dependent. But
Yeah.
instead of just going blindly into China, what they've done is they've identified Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Turkey, Philippines. Countries like Sri Lanka and Philippines have been forgotten by many American brands.
Yeah.
But these people went and identified the key factories, for example, MAS in Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
Victoria's Secret supplier. Not
Yeah.
many people know that, but
Yeah.
these people figured that out.
Yeah.
So what it tells me is that their supply chain game is top of the game.
Strong.
They have
Okay.
the right people managing their sourcing and production and supply chain,
Yeah.
and they're doing a great job. It also helps that their margins are great because the retail prices, like I've been keeping talking about, either you are here or you're here, and if you're here, then you can afford to lose that little bit
Yeah.
of. You don't worry about tariffs that much. You focus
Makes
on
sense.
getting the product right. You focus on getting it to the right customer who's willing to pay that $128.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, the chart that you're showing me. I'm very happy, and I think
Yeah.
that sounds great for a brand like this.
That's amazing. Okay, so that's very, we've had only great things about them. We've been following them for quite a bit of time, but this is very interesting to hear, right? So from your perspective, there's obviously costs, there's tariffs, there's all the other factors, also transit time involvement, amongst other things, right? So let's start with first. What happens if your top country on this list is Sri Lanka right now? Just
Hmm.
hypothetically speaking, right? Sri Lanka gets hit with a 25% tariff today. What would your game plan be if you were sitting in the hot seat and you're like, okay, I mean, what do I do? What's the first thing, second thing, and the third thing you would do if tomorrow morning you found a tweet saying Sri Lanka's got 25% more tariff?
I think what I would look at is how important Sri Lanka to me is in the scheme
Mhm.
of things. If I feel that there are certain factories in Sri Lanka, for example, there is a key category in this particular body, shape, which is called seamless. There are
Mhm.
very few seamless machines existing on the planet today.
Okay.
Sri Lanka happens to have a few, Vietnam happens to have a few, and then they're spread out all over the world. So
Yeah.
if I feel that Sri Lanka is my country, I would continue to buy from Sri Lanka. If I
Gotcha.
feel that Turkey is able to give me the same product and is able to ship it quicker, then I would start moving a little bit out of Turkey. But again, I would not do anything in a hurry. I
Gotcha.
think the product mix that I can see here is divided between 6 to 7 countries, which
Yeah.
gives them a fair bit of leeway to play
Yeah.
around in case tariffs hit one country or the other. Uh,
Gotcha.
and 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 the third thing that I would do is I would basically look at my customer and see if there is any possibility at all of increasing the retail price, which
Elasticity.
which I think brands should be open to. There is nothing wrong
Hmm.
about increasing prices, but like I had said earlier, fashion brands are very scared of increasing prices. It's
Yeah.
almost as if they feel that the brand is going to die
Yeah.
if they raise prices. But again, it happens in Europe all the time.
Yeah.
Zara does it, and H&M has done it. You don't have to, go from $28 to $48.
Yeah.
But if you can go from 28 to 34 or
Fine.
33,
Makes a
it's
difference.
and you can get away with it. I think a brand like Skims can get away with it.
Makes
In
sense.
which
No,
case, you end up
absolutely.
paying the tariff and to continue to source from wherever you want to source from.
You're running responsible businesses. Nothing, ill about it, right? At the end of the day, you're a for-profit entity and you're running a business. There's no
Correct.
reason to feel bad about it. That actually brings me to the second point, right? I think a lot of companies kind of struggle with it, and like you said, right, these guys have been very smart at picking out the gems and going to the countries that are like been forgotten, that have a lot of infrastructure still left over from all these large American companies producing their one point and moving on. And so they've managed to do it, right? But when you come to this situation where, like, okay, how important is a particular country in my supply chain? The various factors you need to think about is transit time.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'll be honest with you, a lot of brands we work with today, they're still beholden to China, not just because the cost alone, it's also because the transit time advantage that, hey, I am not able to plan 90 days in advance. I cannot afford or whatever, like, 90 day shipping lead time or so, right? I can only work with this 25-day lead time in terms of production from factory to floor. So I'm going to be beholden to China.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of view this? Because all of these countries, with the Vietnam exception, of course, most of them are a little bit off the beaten path factories.
Yeah.
How should a brand think about, hey, I should tap into these advantages and compromise on lead time? What would your advice be to them?
Again, I think you have to go brand by brand, and China has built itself over a period of time, and they've today control almost all the shipping, corridors of the world, as you know very well. When you control the forwarder as well as the shipping company as well as the shipping lines, obviously you have a huge advantage over everybody else.
Yeah.
But if you're doing production in another country for a product that is actually very very light,
Hmm.
uh, in the end, if you have to air the goods
Hmm.
versus shipping the goods, I don't see that as a problem also. So if
Okay.
Skims were to decide, funnily enough, you and I have both probably gotten goods from Temu and AliExpress and Shein, right? They don't ship the goods to the
I
US.
do hate them with a passion and refuse to shop there, but that's just me being silly and
Yeah.
intimidating.
Well, just as an example, those goods were all coming by air. So if
Yeah.
a Shein tomorrow decides to get their leggings, or whatever, the bras or whatever by air from a third country,
Yeah.
uh, it may add, yes, some price to the thing, but in the end, if the cost is just getting your goods in 6 days versus 40 days,
Yeah.
pay that price. Pay that price.
Yeah.
Get your goods over here,
Hmm.
and save your customer. And in fact, that's a USP, that you're
Yeah.
getting your goods very quickly in. The customer should actually be happy.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
That actually, no, that makes a lot of sense. That brings me to, maybe looking at like a middle ground approach here, right? Like, let's say, do you think there's a future where you could bring components, right? The cups come from Vietnam, assembled in Mexico, or assembled it in even America, right? We're trying to bring jobs back here. What's your perspective on, a brand like this with the image and the kind of reputation they have, to consider the path of like, hey, let's go vertical, let's control the entire supply chain down? Do you think it's a good idea?
Yes, I'm all for that. I think if that were to happen, it just needs an evolution of their own supply chain for
Okay.
that to happen. And,
Okay.
and and I think in the fashion industry then has to learn from the electronic industry, for example. The
Yeah.
iPhone has parts which are sourced from 47 countries,
Yeah.
and they're delivered to that one final country where the assembly happens, and
Yeah.
the assembly happens very quickly. The auto industry, for example, has been doing it for decades. Uh,
Yeah.
the fashion industry, especially in parts like intimates and all, where you can also have 60, 70 parts
Yeah.
to a bra, is very reticent.
Yeah.
And they feel that they can't do it because they're not using all the tools which are
Yeah.
available in today's world to them. They are not very adaptable to the ERP systems or the supply chain systems, which have been in existence for years. So if we
Yeah.
were to start following them, I think what your suggestion is fantastic. Why not get all the parts here into the
Hmm.
US and be able to get a made in USA label onto your product,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
adds a certain value.
Of
And all you're
course.
doing is basically just getting parts in from the rest of the world.
That's the first step in manufacturing. There's no reason to feel look down on it, right? Like, you can't go
Yeah.
from 0 to 100 in day one. You got to start somewhere. Let's start with assembly and then gradually kind of continue to vertically integrate
And start with
the
a
product
better
line.
end product. Start with the Skims kind of product where you have a
Yeah.
better premium on the product. You don't need to start making shirts or
Right.
t-shirts here tomorrow.
Yeah.
But a Skims product, a legging, a Lululemon
Yeah.
legging, for example, why not make it here? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's very reassuring. And again, shout out to the Skims team. Obviously, I think you have Nitin's vote of confidence with his years of experience. Looking at the spread, definitely some very
And once
very
you put it out in a chart like this, Ram, you just see the picture very, very clearly.
yeah,
And they're doing a good job from the looks of it.
yeah. No, great. Okay, so to keep up with time, we're going to open the next one. The next one we're going to go for is a brand called, without further ado, drum roll, please, Brunt Workwear. So this is a company that is headquartered in North Reading, Massachusetts. Again, we've had the incredible pleasure of working with them. And they are, started out as a workwear brand. They've been focused in that particular line of work, and they've done really, really well. In fact, they're opening their first flagship retail store in Boston. They just started construction, doing some amazing work over there. So, again, a drum roll for a second time. This is what their importer profile looks like. Again, I'm going to go quickly down to the countries they source from. Again, just to perspective here, footwear is their biggest thing, clothing, accessories, trousers. That's the spread of the products they focus on. Again, you've looked at the website at a high level. They do a lot of work boots. They do a lot of apparel that you use in, I guess day-to-day workwear is the kind of theme they're going with. And they've also got some, subscription boxes. They've got packs and bundles. They're doing really well. Is from everything we know, they're an amazing brand. To kind of aspire to be for many companies out there. So this has been their sourcing pattern over the last couple of years, bringing it into America. This chart is a little off, but it shows just the U.S. imports. Maybe this is a better view this time, looking at where they bring products from. So initial thoughts over there for this particular product category, Nitin, over to you.
I think it's looking more and more like people have already been planning for a China plus one or China plus two strategy for a while. And I think if you look at this chart itself, it also probably indicates that many people, even though they feel that there are certain categories that China is great at, they have been looking at over the last 2-3 years at least to try and sort of look at other resources. So that is telling me that we should be looking at American companies, for example, look more outside of China. Maybe it's just a thing of looking at options, and maybe they will close a couple of these countries down because they don't know what is going to work or what is not. But I'm glad that they are actually stepping outside of their comfort zone, try and create these supply chains, because unless a company like this, for example, creates the supply chain, the companies which are coming after them will be it'll be more difficult for them. So it's good for them.
Okay.
I also, in fact, like the fact that there are certain companies who create a market, for example, in workwear. And when you have a captive audience in that category, it makes perfect sense for you to then start expanding and giving your customer other categories as well. Don't let them go back into a Cabela's or a Bass Pro shop. Let them just keep shopping in your own brand. Which is a great thing for American brands to understand. Not many do.
Yeah, Cactus TV, man, we live and breathe that in our universe. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So again, going into the product categories itself, right? Clearly, they started out as a boot company, and that's been their bread and butter. And obviously, they've expanded into other categories now. So maybe narrowing down on boots itself, right? From what we can tell over here, they're still fairly heavily Asia-based for their boots. Now, what's the scene with how does a 50% tariff on, let's say, Asian footwear happen? Like, I know we're going after furniture. We're expecting a result to come from the White House soon.
Yeah.
What if footwear next? What
and
do
I
you
think
think?
Cambodia has also been hit. Cambodia is one of the higher tariffed countries in today's world. And their reliance on Cambodia, if we go by these charts, is not this thing. Cambodia, in my mind, I'm sorry to say, is a highly dispensable country in the scheme of things. Cambodia is a very small country. It was created as kind of a overflow country for Vietnam, because at one point, Vietnam, being a small country, was not able to take a lot of production in. So a lot of Chinese owned manufacturing went into Cambodia. Cambodia, though, has created a whole lot of other problems. There are labor problems, and there are local domestic problems and politics, etc. So let's see what happens to Cambodia in the end. But I think countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc., are here to stay. And when I look at their shoes, I'm surprised they don't have India as a manufacturing partner here, because India has also been a traditional, not a sneaker manufacturer, but a large workwear shoe, leather shoe, and they make very complicated shoes. So
they are big in the leather business for sure. You're right. It's surprising we don't see that name in that list.
So I think they should definitely look at India. It's the country I was born in, so I'm happy to plug it wherever I can.
For sure. So was I. Uh,
so, so again, things are tough right now in India. There's this the specter
tariff.
of the additional 25%. But I urge everybody who's listening into this podcast to give India a chance, because our feeling is that this 25% is sooner
Gonna go
rather
away.
than later going to go away.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, it will.
Yeah,
Pretty reasonably confident about that. But again, we'll have to wait for the lawmakers to make the choice.
correct.
Now, I know as much as I would, I think India would definitely be a viable fit in this list that we're seeing here for this particular category. But where does Mexico fit in all this?
Mexico, yeah, again, I was about to get into Mexico as well. Mexico also is very good at this workwear kind of production. They do a
Okay.
ton of denim, they do a ton of
Yeah.
bottoms, hardcore bottoms. They also do a lot of these cowboy boots, for example. They produce
Hmm.
them for American cowboy boot companies. So,
Hmm.
you can always tweak them a bit, and it's right next door. It's
Gotcha.
just that a lot of fashion companies also, don't tend to think of Mexico when they start
Yeah.
looking. When they start going into Asia, they get lured in by all the Asian countries,
Why
where
is
they
that?
see.
Why does Mexico not do a good enough job? Just out of curiosity.
That's that's a good question. Mexico at one point was the highest manufacturing partner for Levi's, but it's
Hmm.
no longer so. Uh,
Okay, interesting.
Mexico is right next door, and but things just don't work out for Mexico. And maybe it's a marketing problem. Maybe it's the fear of whatever the drug cartel or whatever it is. Though I don't think trade per se has ever been affected by any
Yeah.
violence across the border. So I think Mexico could definitely be another country that we should be looking at. Yes, it's
Okay.
more expensive than Asia is, but
Yeah.
it's right next door. Uh,
I mean, do you have other benefits, right? The USMCA or CUSMA or
and you
whatever.
have these benefits, and especially if the goods are cut in the US and moved over to Mexico and then produced there and come back there, those kind of things do happen. They've had a garment industry or a fashion industry or a shoe industry for hundreds of years. They've been manufacturing them, but actually, that's a good question. I don't know what the state of the industry is today. It
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, should be looked at.
No, I think from what we've heard, right, we're still seeing a lot of demand for Mexico-based, like assembly across the
Assembly.
border.
Yeah,
We see a lot of medical devices getting assembled in Tijuana. It's one of the biggest industries right now in Tijuana. But it's not, again, they're not vertically integrated. Very few industries are like, you could do, prints perhaps. That's the most you're going to
yeah.
be able to do very quickly. Buy a bunch of blanks and put some printed t-shirts out there. That
But
part
Central
is
America
yours.
does a ton of that.
Yeah,
Most of the T-shirts that I have bought in this country are El Salvador, Guatemala,
yeah, yeah,
Haiti. So that production goes on in Central America. There's no
yeah.
reason why Mexico should not be able to do anything.
Exactly, right. The proximity should give them an advantage
Yeah.
there. That brings us down to, okay, so
I
we
mean, we
did.
have people trying to cross the border anyway. Let them stay there and make our T-shirts.
Hey, it's very interesting times right now. I'm not getting into that. It's definitely a very difficult time at the border for a lot of
Yeah,
different people who are being separated and all that. But at the end of the day, there is the law, and we do have to respect the law. That's what we do as businessmen. So hey, I'm going to let the lawmakers figure this piece out, and we're going to do what it takes to
absolutely.
continue to survive. So with that actually being said, right? So Brunt workwear, we've kind of felt that their footwear could be done in countries outside of Cambodia. They should be thinking about India. That's a good call out over there. Mexico has the legs, but it's got its own issues and needs to be resolved. Is probably the biggest takeaway I have over there.
And they don't do any
Would you
production
say
in the US domestically, I see.
they do? I'm told. So again, certain products that are being done in America now. Again, this for what it's worth, this only shows the import records. It doesn't
I
show the
imported.
entire supply chain. We don't know all the other products. So we only know this from U.S. Customs. What are they declared with U.S. Customs? I do know these guys are big. They also produce in America. So again, they're a very responsible company. They're doing exceptionally well. We have a lot of respect for them. And do you think for a country like, again, nothing specific to their brand, but just knowing their category, do you think it's even practical for this company to aim and say, I want to consolidate all my sourcing in a small set of countries? Like instead of having it at 5 countries, I want to consolidate in 2 countries so I bring economies of scale. Is that a tactic that large, fashion houses adopt at some point, or no?
No, I think that that has gone. It's history now. The
Okay.
times of producing everything in one or two countries is gone. The
Okay.
fear of being hit by something or the other is so high
Yeah.
that it does make sense to sort of spread out
Diversify.
your
Okay.
apparel, especially when you get into multiple categories. You know, if you're just making the
Exactly.
iPhone, it makes sense to just make it between China and India. But when
Yeah.
you're controlling a whole lot of categories with fabrics coming in from different places,
Hmm.
you know, there's different fabrics involved. There's cotton, there's nylon, there's polyesters, and then your accessories, you have shoes. It does make sense to sort of be spread out, but
Hmm.
spread out intelligently. You know, instead of being
Makes
spread
sense.
out into 20 countries, which a
Yeah.
lot of people used to do, it makes sense to be in 4 or 5 key countries where you are of importance to your factory as well.
That's very reassuring. I mean, listen, that makes logical sense in today's day and time, right? We went from China plus one to China plus Vietnam plus one to, you're
Right.
multi-source every goddamn product. It makes sense. But, even though you're within one category, you're like, hey, industries have to become resilient. You have to accept the fact that you're going to be sourcing from multiple countries,
Yeah.
and you need to have the infrastructure to support that. Whether it's people, headcount, technology, however you want to think about it, you need to invest in that. That's one essential for your business to survive, is my takeaway from that.
I just wish our industry gets more tech savvy, you know, because in terms of being tech adaptable, our industry is so far behind uh,
Yeah.
almost every other industry. And today, the technology is available almost at every spectrum, from design till delivery.
Yeah.
At every step, you know, there are some tech advances or the other available,
Yeah.
which some brands are adapting to much more quickly, but most are not. So I just whoever is listening to this, you know, please adapt to tech. It'll
Yeah.
only help you. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's what every big guy is doing, right? Efficiency is the name of the game, like you said at the start. So that brings us to the third brand, which again, I'm incredibly excited to share about. So, drum roll, please. Is a golf brand called Mizzen+Main. Uh, if you're a golfer, you've definitely seen this brand. They're doing exceptionally well. I own a lot of these shirts. I've gotten, yeah. So I'm a huge fan of their products. They are they've been an amazing company for many, many, many years. They also have a very interesting supply chain. Again, drum roll, please. I'm bringing it up on the screen. Let me make it bigger. Again, the kind of products they bring in: shirts, trousers, t-shirts. Again, very golf heavy. And here again, a third country, the third company that does not have China on top of that list.
Correct.
So here we are. I mean, we're talking about China plus one. We're seeing this action again. I know we handpicked these three companies, but specifically speaking, we're seeing this as a trend. What do you say about this particular, company, Nathan? What jumps at you looking at the categories they service?
So, you know, I think amazingly what you've done today is you've found three niche players. These are not
Yeah,
mass players who want to cater to every segment of the audience. They've
yeah,
gone after a very specific segment. They've identified that segment. They've figured out that the guy who, you know, wants to wear this product doesn't want to be bothered about ironing his shirts, for example. There are
yeah.
creases in the shirt.
100%. That's
Yeah, he
me.
doesn't want to sweat through his shirt and see, you know, that thing
Yeah,
while he's wearing it, either at a party or during a meeting or while playing golf or whatever it is. And
yeah,
so some kind of a tech research went into this kind of a product. It's very
yeah,
synthetic based product, and which guarantees the fact that you don't deal with the traditional problems that a cotton based thing used to have. And I think they've cracked it. So
yeah.
it's a great product in that sense of the word. And
Hmm.
again, like I keep saying, if you have a product which demands its value, you will get that value. Their
Yeah,
product, if you look at their prices, it's not a cheap product, you know,
yeah,
$158. But the fact is that this shirt will stay in his wardrobe for 20 years and will
yeah,
keep performing year after year.
yeah,
So once you create this mix of consumers, this consumer is not going to leave you. Then all you have to do is keep servicing this consumer.
yeah.
While they've started with this, dress shirts and bottoms, etc., I'm sure down the line they will, move on to other categories once they're fully satisfied this
Hmm.
particular thing, like our earlier brand
Yeah,
has done.
yeah.
So in that aspect, I think I really like this brand.
Gotcha. Okay, nice. like I said, I have no qualms in admitting I love this brand. I own a lot of their shirts, so and other products. So with that, the one thing that kind of sticks out is like obviously they're a little heavily indexed on Indonesia over
Yes.
here for their particular. What's your read? I mean, I know we spoke multiple times about multi-sourcing, but based on this category, what would be your recommendations on countries they should be paying attention to, and
Yeah, so
what's
I
your
think
read?
looking at the product alone, the very first country that we started talking about, Sri Lanka, is I
Yeah,
think should be on top of their mind as well, because that
gotcha.
country is also there are very few factories on the planet today who can actually handle synthetic fabrics, and there is a
Okay,
certain expertise that goes into a tailor. Because sewing a synthetic fabric versus sewing a cotton fabric, very different things. The synthetic
gotcha,
fabric tends to slip a lot, so you train
gotcha.
your workers accordingly. You pay them more. There are certain factories who do that better than other factories. And
Yeah,
Sri Lanka is a great country. Indonesia, again, another country which had sort of fallen off the sourcing map of the US
brands.
brands,
Yeah,
was also created back in the 80s and 90s, mostly by Korean uh, traders who,
okay,
after the
okay,
business became too expensive in Korea, moved over to Indonesia. So in Indonesia, it was not the Chinese who went in like the
gotcha.
Vietnam setup. It's actually the Koreans who are there. And so they created this base of, at that time, the category which was emerging, which was your
Mm-hmm.
leggings and your activewear. Even today, a lot of Lululemon production, for example, happens in Indonesia. We don't consider that an American company; it's a Canadian company, so we don't talk about it much here.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but Lululemon produces a lot in Indonesia. I do
Interesting.
get a little scared looking at their mix because I think it's so Indonesia dependent.
Yeah.
And Indonesia is also not the most stable country.
Okay.
There are certain things which keep
Geopolitics.
happening in Indonesia. Just today
Yeah.
there was a big demonstration against somebody or the other,
Okay.
which closed a few factories. While it is a good country, it is definitely a very expensive country to produce out of,
Understood. Okay.
and there I think their spread in Indonesia is very very. Uh, all their eggs seem to be in Indonesia's basket. So
Okay.
I think they
No.
should definitely look at a Sri Lanka, and if they are going to ever scale up, definitely countries like Jordan,
Okay.
who also have
Interesting.
great expertise in
Yeah, and they have
in
trade
synthetic,
agreements with America too, so you get some
and they
benefits from
have
being a good
they will
country.
continue to have this special treatment from the US. So they will
Yeah.
never be tariffed. I would think, never say never, but they should not. They should
Yeah.
not be, and
Never
the
say never.
and the transit times to the US are
Yeah.
very very quick. They,
Yeah.
they do all the Nike, Under Armour, the sportswear kind of production. So that could
Yeah.
be another country that they could look at. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm
Listen, I
sure they have
mean,
their reasons to be in Indonesia. Maybe they own some of those factories. I don't know, but
yeah. No, but I
but
mean, listen, from your experience, right, you could look at a fabric, you could look at the product, you could look at the construction and form an opinion, right? They're 8812 poly span, poly being the heavy,
yes,
and they're selling at $158. They're selling dress shirts. So with that context in mind, you could do a back math. I mean, in your mind, of what
absolutely.
you think is absolutely reasonable to spend on buying the product. And with that in context, what your recommendations is Sri Lanka and Jordan.
Yeah,
Is there
and
any
and
other
I would
countries?
think
Would
at
Central
these
America?
prices, this should be the last brand to worry about tariffs. For them,
Okay.
tariff is probably the seventh item on their internal strategy meetings.
Priority list.
So
Okay.
yeah, so for them,
Okay.
I think tariff is not something to worry about. So they can definitely start looking, and down the line, if they have this kind of a retail price to look at, maybe they should look at U.S. production also, because the U.S. also has good synthetic manufacturers in the LA area. There are not many, but
Okay.
there are a few, and this could be something which is a good selling point for a Mizzen+Main, that made in USA.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, we didn't cover this even for the previous brands over here, but maybe we'll just do it for here, right? Mizzen and Main. Now, when you're moving from, let's say, in Indonesia has been doing this for however many years they've been doing it to, and you take it to, I don't, Sri Lanka, Jordan, even America for that matter. What do you think they should be paying attention to to make just, at a high level to, not from a cost perspective, from a quality perspective? What are the things that they should be paying attention to when they're evaluating a factory in a new country?
I think something like this should always be accompanied by having uh, some trainers from your existing manufacturing to
Okay.
set up the new manufacturing, and a lot of people
Okay.
don't do that. They just
Yeah.
randomly take something away from one guy, give it to the other,
Yeah.
and expect him to sort of solve the problem on his
Figure it
own.
out.
Whereas the simplest thing is just, hire or just take away on a temporary basis what your existing manufacturing is. Take a couple of experts from there, let them go and train your new manufacturer, maybe for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And that is always helpful. It
See,
is always helpful.
that is something that is, it's so intuitive, but I've never heard that, to be honest with you, right? It's just like people don't think of it. They think it is an adversarial situation when they're pulling production from one factor to the other. Well,
Yeah.
it kind of is in some ways, let's be honest, right? There is a lot of adversity in that decision. But, if you want to protect your interests as a brand, you're going to have to work out a deal with your factory. You want to do business responsibly. You want to give them some ramp downtime and then try to make a deal with them to see if they'll, help you set things up in the next place, just so that you deal with all this musical chair on tariffs with American politics. You're able to at least run a brand that is not going to be deficient in quality when you move from one country to the next.
People, I think,
Makes
don't pay that much attention, Ram, to apparel, thinking that it's just apparel. Apparel is not apparel. It's actually a very complicated piece. So many components go into it, so many parts go into it, and so many different operations go into it. People don't really pay that much attention. Whereas the same person, if they were assembling a car, would do it. They would send you an expert, to sit for 6 months. If I mean, you and I both are from India. When India was setting up their global capability centers, IT centers in India, what large companies like Infosys, etc., did was they hired hundreds of Americans to actually
hmm
go and travel and stay in Bangalore and Hyderabad
and
to
teach.
train
Yeah.
people there on how things need to run. And those
Yeah.
people then come back, and then the people who are trained continue to do what they need to do. So I think we should learn from the best practices of other industries and
That
do all this.
Yeah. Whew. So there is a huge consulting practice of some nature. There's potential for a consulting practice of some nature here.
Which doesn't exist too much. If you think about
Yeah.
it, people are, do this, and not many people hire other people. But I
Yeah.
would think that consulting of this kind needs to happen for apparel, where
Yeah.
you go and train a new factory on how to actually manufacture product,
Yeah.
which is much more complicated than what they've done, instead
Yeah.
of letting them, learn on their own. That's where
Yeah.
mistakes happen.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say this out to the listeners, right? I know Nitin has, officially stepped down from his large portfolio companies that he used to essentially run the US side, but he is active in the fashion space. He works with a lot of brands, right? I mean, you advise a lot of companies. You're a lot of times in New York. You're traveling somewhere every time I call you. So if you are thinking about, getting some outside assistance, definitely tap Nitin. Nitin's available, and he's a wealth of
Yeah.
knowledge. He's got a wealth of connections. I mean, and not to kind of date him, but he's got a massive Rolodex. Uh, Hopefully, it's all on an iPhone today, but he's got a massive Rolodex of factories and companies he's working with. He's a big proponent of technology. He was talking to me about, how AI is going to change the way design and development happens. A lot of times, in even simple things that t-shirts and print. He was talking about this like 4 years ahead of time, like before, like now it's like everybody can do it. Like 4 years ago, he was talking about it. So definitely tap Nitin. Reach out to us if you need an introduction to Nitin. He's got a lot to offer.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's a cue that people take advantage and actually take initiative to tap into consulting
I think
services
our
and
industry
try to do it.
is ripe for disruption. We've been saying it
Yeah.
for 25 years, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it took us till 2025 and certain geopolitical happenings. But
Yeah.
I think our industry needs dramatic disruption, and
Yeah.
it's high time we did that. It'll only improve things.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So those were the three brands. And Nitin, thank you very much for your time. And I think, I walked away with we're 3 for 3 and companies that have been very smart in their niche. They've been very smart about picking their suppliers. They've gone off the beaten path and found really, diamond in the rough kind of suppliers. There is some room to diversify risk across all the three companies we spoke to by going to new countries. But they're in a pretty decent place as is the takeaway. Is that a fair summary?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much, Nitin. Really appreciate your time
Thank you, Ram.
and look forward to continuing this conversation as more news comes from the White House and the situation with the tariffs.
Keep doing the good work you're doing at Silk. Every end of the supply chain needs upgradation.
No, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.